Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to another exciting and informative video on our YouTube channel. If you are joining us for the first time, we want to thank you for watching. In this episode, I will be diving into the reason why the French army has begun its withdrawal from the country of Niger. I will look into the news coming out from France, more publications, and give you some analytical information as well as to more specifically to reason why these issues are not going anywhere soon and why France has succumbed to Niger with regards to its imperialistic aspect in the continent of Africa. I will encourage you to watch this video to the end for clarity and better understanding. So without any more delay, let's just dive straight into it. The Ministry of the Armed Forces announced that about 1,500 troops will be withdrawn starting this week and be completed by the end of the year. This departure is taking place against a backdrop of continuing tension with the coup leaders in the country of Niger. If you look at the geopolitics and France's presence in West Africa, specifically with French-speaking countries, in a press release of less than 10 lines, the French Minister of Armed Forces announced most recently, specifically on October the 5th, that it had formally begun preparation for withdrawing 1,500 French troops and soldiers in those countries. These soldiers have been stuck in Niger since the coup that overthrew President Mohamed Bazoum as of July 26 this year. The withdrawal is due to start this week to make it possible to bring all troops back by the end of the year, the statement read. This announcement comes just under 2 weeks after the French head of state, President Emmanuel Macron, finally agreed recently on September the 24th to the French soldiers' departure. The Niger coup leaders have been vehemently demanding this departure since the beginning of August. During the 2-month-long standoff with the country of France, Niger's new authorities organized a blockade of the bases where the French soldiers were stationed. This action has been gradually depriving the soldiers of water, food, fuel, and also security and electricity, based on some information coming out from France. Paris gave no indication of how this withdrawal will be carried out. The Minister of Armed Forces insisted only that good coordination with Niger armies is essential with the success of this maneuver. This phrase alludes to the still tense relations between the coup leaders and the French authorities. Despite Paris's resignations and the departure of France's ambassador to Niamey, Sylvain Height, on September the 27th, these two countries are currently in a stalemate with regards to progress in their relationship. Niger is one of those countries that has exposed France's presence in the region and France's neo-colonial aspect in terms of their operation and manipulation in the country of Niger. France has extorted Niger in several ways, concentrating resources, looking at its exploration in partnership, currency, and several other ways in terms of social interaction. The relationship within France and also with regards to its former colonies had not been cozy. Niger was the latest to have exposed France's presence and in terms of its manipulation in the region. If you go back to events in the region, Paris has discreetly opened discussions with the ruling military in Niamey on the withdrawal of certain elements after initially refusing to comply with the junta's demand. Some 1,500 soldiers were reportedly still being deployed in the country of Niger at the time. France tried to break the deadlock in Niger without recognizing the de facto authorities, and it's a climate of growing hostility. After 5 weeks of tension with the members of the July 26 coup, Paris has finally begun talks at a time redeploying some of its forces in Niger after initially refusing to comply with the demands of the Nigerian military, who have made political capital of the departure of France's soldiers. The Ministry of Armed Forces and several corroborating sources told other international media, specifically Le Monde, recently that they were discussing in details in the withdrawal certain military elements in that country. At the beginning of August, the junta gave France 1 month to withdraw from Nigerian territory after renouncing the military cooperation agreement between Paris and Niamey. On September 2nd, the eve of the expiration of the ultimatum set by the purchased in that country. Thousands of pro-junta Nigerians once again demonstrate against the presence of the French military just a stone throw from the base that occupy Niamey with other foreign detachment. If you look at the tension between these two countries, in practice, the French and Nigerian military had already suspended all forms of joint operation against the jihad group since the coup. All military resources, particularly air assets, drones, helicopters, fighter jets and so on, were immobilized. It is normal to discuss the French withdrawal as anti-terrorist cooperation has been disrupted and interrupted, a source within the government has pointed out. This relationship has been sour for many years. Looking at France's interaction with its former colony, France has not invested hugely in terms of infrastructure, resources and other very important criteria that you would consider a country that is interacting with another former colony. The relationship has been that of exploitation and extortion. The Nigerian people have put an end with regards to these particular activities and operations with the former colony. France focuses on its own interest. There is no problem for the country to be involved in a nation focused on its own interest. However, if the relationship has been that based on exploitation and extortion with regards to natural resources only, then that relationship is one-sided. Hopefully that this particular withdrawal will take place smoothly and France will leave the region in peace, and also that Niger will take over the country's control and also engage with other militants who are trying to threaten the country and to bring Niger back in peace. Hopefully Niger will come back to where it was a couple of years ago and stability will return based on the current issues in the region. I want to thank you for watching. If you are new to our channel, we encourage you to check some of our informative videos on the YouTube channel. We are looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Lila, was this announcement a surprise?
Well, on the face of it, certainly it was. I mean, this has lasted for almost 2 months now, since the July coup, where the Niger's junta was calling for the French ambassador Sylvain Ité to leave Niger. And Macron was adamant that his ambassador would not leave. At one point, the junta gave the ambassador 48 hours to leave. This deadline passed and he was declared persona non grata. But Macron always was firm publicly in saying that the ambassador would stay on in Niamey. In fact, just last month, when Macron addressed his ambassadors, this is an annual meeting of French ambassadors in Paris, the focus of the meeting was actually on the ambassador who was not in the room. Ambassador Ité joined the meeting on a video link from Niamey. And at this meeting, Macron did not mince his word. Let's take a listen to what he said.
I think our policy is the right one. It's based on the courage of President Mohamed Bazoum and on the commitment of our diplomats and our ambassador on the ground, who remain steadfast despite the pressure.
But, you know, despite the talk behind the scenes, there was negotiations going on. And France 24 did an exclusive just 2 weeks ago, where we had our sources telling us that the French officials were engaged in talks with some Niger military officials on a drawing down, a streamlining of drones and aerial reconnaissance missions. Because frankly, France's position was getting untenable, this position. You had an ambassador isolated in the embassy, anti-French sentiment was rising, there were pro-coup demonstrations in Niamey, and France was not really getting the support of its allies. France was calling for a return of ousted leader President Mohamed Bazoum. This was echoed by its allies, but France was not getting the sort of support it needed. And so this situation was untenable, really.
So why then was France not getting that support from its Western allies and also allies within ECOWAS?
Well, that's an interesting question. Look, on the face of it, France's African and Western allies, European allies, were echoing France's statement of a return to democratic order. Now, ECOWAS, the West African bloc, initially said that they would have a military intervention, a rapid reaction force, but this did not happen. For starters, there were 2 countries, 2 member nations in ECOWAS, Burkina Faso and Mali that themselves had military coups, and they declared that any intervention would be seen as an act of war. Now, the EU came out very strongly for a return to democratic order, but there was not consistency among EU member states. Italy and Germany, for instance, were calling for negotiations, for, toning down the rhetoric. And very important was the US position, because both France and the US have bases in Niger, considerable military assets in this country. If we look at a map, the US's biggest drone base in Africa is based in Agadir in Niger. Now, the US sent an envoy immediately after the coup to negotiate with the junta. It refrained from calling it a military coup, because under US legislation, if there is a military coup, Washington has to cut ties and pull out its troops. Why was the US calling for negotiations? Well, strategic interests and money, frankly. The US has put in a lot of money into its operations in Niger. From Niger, it surveys operations right from Somalia into Central Africa. So there was a lot of assets over there. And also, I think Washington was also thinking about the geostrategic calculations and security, because Niger is really important for security.
And what other fallout are we expecting from this announcement? What are the consequences going to be?
Well, the fallout, beyond any doubt, is a worsening security in a very geostrategic area. You just have to look at a map of Niger to figure out how important this country is. Now, Niger is a landlocked country. It shares its borders with 7 countries, and these include Algeria, Libya to the north, as well as Burkina Faso, Mali. So, so this affects security not just in the Sahel, in Central Africa, in Northern Africa, which is the Mediterranean, which is really right on by Southern Europe, and it's NATO's southern flank instead. Now, what has been happening in Niger and countries like Mali and Burkina Faso, which has been seeing this spate of military coup, is that Russia is making advances in this region. Russia has been operating with its group Wagner. Now, Wagner has fighters in the region, but it also has fake news and misinformation operations. So Russia was pushing an anti-French narrative. This is a consistent pattern that we've been seeing in former French colonies. The problem, though, is Russia is increasing its extent, its footprint in the Sahel as well as in eastern Libya,